Pro Football Playbook, presented by the Pigskin Podcast Network, your source for team news, draft needs, player profiles and rankings, full Senior Bowl, Combine, and NFL draft coverage, news, analysis, discussion. It's in the playbook. Now, here is your host, sports journalist Bill Alvstad, and featured analyst Keith Myers. Pro Football Playbook Podcast listeners, I'm Bill Alvstad, your host, sitting down with Keith Myers, your co-host. We're talking playoffs, had a great weekend, tons to talk about. AFC, Nfc Championship games coming up this weekend. It's all laid out. We know who's in. We might even predict a few outcomes. Who knows what's going to happen in this show, but let's talk about what did happen this last weekend. First, Keith, welcome in.
Yeah, going to talk about what happened. I was entertained. That's what happened. This was one incredibly fun weekend of playoff football. 3 games decided with walk-off field goals. The fourth game had a last-second field goal to send it to overtime, and then, a walk-off play in overtime. I mean, you don't get better and more entertaining.
That's true. Yeah, and the level of play, the quarterback play, particularly the last game with the Bills and the Chiefs, was just off the charts. It was the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes show, and it did not disappoint. And just so happened, Keith, I watched the 3 games decided by a field goal, all in live real time, and the game that I decided that I was going to skip out on, and I had a family thing that I needed to do and so forth, was the Bills Chiefs, and I had to watch that later. So I missed that, and everyone's texting me going, "Are you seeing what's going on? This is crazy."
Yeah,
I'm going, don't spoil it for me.
That does explain why you didn't text me back when I was like, "Oh my God."
I know, right? That was hard for me. Then because I knew it was epic and I was missing it, and it made it even worse.
Yeah.
But I did go back and check it out. It was phenomenal.
That was one of the most epic games and epic conclusions to a game that you'll ever see. I mean, and I know there's a lot of hyperbole out there and people describing it, but literally there's 25 points in the last minute 58 of the game that got you to overtime.
Yeah.
Josh,
and I've never seen a game where just 2 quarterbacks literally carried those teams to this epic scoring matchup that was crazy. Josh Allen clearly played well enough to win. The guy just simply didn't make any mistakes. 4 touchdowns, no turnovers, 27 to 37, highly efficient, 329 yards. He also carried the ball 11 times for 68 yards. Just really did everything that he could in order to win, and just didn't get any help. The defense didn't help him out a lot. His coaching didn't help out a lot, and they didn't have a running game to kind of help take some time off the clock and keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands. Other than that, though, you can't really fault Josh Allen for not getting this thing at the end. And then, of course, Patrick Mahomes, say what you want about him and so forth, but man, that guy he just has a feel for just getting it done, whatever it takes. And the ability for him to have such chemistry with Tyreek Hill is
Travis Kelce.
And Travis Kelce is just something else.
So I don't know if you saw the thing that, because the big play that got them into field goal range to tie it so they could go to overtime and ultimately win it. That play to Kelce was not the called play. They were lined up to run a play, and the Bills called a timeout to make sure that they had their defense and everything set the way they wanted to. And Travis Kelce goes over to Mahomes and is like, "Hey, look, they're not putting anyone on the inside." And he's like, if they line up and they're going to do the same thing, he's like, "Just hit me over the middle. This will be easy." And then they go back out there, and they have the defense aligned like that, and you can hear Go watch the replay. You can hear Mahomes yelling, "Do it, Kels! Do it! Do it, Kels! Do it!" And then ask for the ball from the center, and boom, that's the throw. They talked about it during that timeout, and this is according to Kelsey, and then rewatching the replay and listening. But according to Kelsey, he's like, they talked about it because in that timeout, and they said, "Hey, if this is what we get, just run, do that." And we'll get it. And
yeah, wow.
I mean, what do you do? Well, what do you do? What do you do? I mean, there's no, right? You can't stop it. You can't beat it. I mean, it's phenomenal. It's just incredible football.
And the fact that they had the timeouts. A lot of teams by then have burned their timeouts. They make mistakes. You can really point to a well-coached team that goes into, with that much time left, having all their timeouts. I mean, you rarely see that.
Yep.
Enabled them to really go in with some confidence there. And there's not too many quarterbacks in the NFL that can have 13 seconds on the clock with that much composure and only take a couple plays to get in field goal range, and not just field goal range, but under a 50-yarder to tie it. And then the way that, the coin flip situation, and that's going to be talked about for a while, and the overtime rules in the NFL where, the first team goes down and scores a touchdown, it's over. And that's exactly what happened with Kansas City. So as much as we all want the Bills and so forth, there's, when you really take a look at the Bills in that situation, there were, they had to go 4 for 4 on fourth down conversions. To stay in this game. There were a number of other things that kind of made it so it was a little closer than it probably should have been. I think the Chiefs were the better team on this day, even though Josh Allen played out of his mind.
He did play
overall. I think the Chiefs probably were the team that deserved to win this game.
Well, when I look at that and the whole game and everything, Josh Allen won that game twice. He drove them down, got a touchdown inside of 2 minutes, thinking, all right, that we got it. The Chiefs then score, and he's got to do it again. He drives them down, gets them into the end zone again for another touchdown, and that 3-point lead. And with 13 seconds left, he just won him the game, right? Nope, didn't happen. Never saw the football again after that point. As his defense gave up 2 points. I honestly think that whoever won that coin toss won the game. And there wasn't anything that was going to happen, because at that point in the game, those two defenses, both of them, were gone. There was nothing
exhausted
left in the tank. Their fuel tank was beyond empty, and neither defense was getting a stop at any point.
Well, that's the counter argument against changing the rules as well. The defense had the opportunity, and they did. This is a team game, and the defense didn't get the ball back or didn't give their team a chance to get. That's the way that the overtime rules work. Everyone has the same rules. It's the luck of the draw when you have a coin toss. I don't know what the answer is, Keith. Everyone's pointing to college rules and all this and all that.
Yeah, I don't really like the college rule either.
It's never going to be completely perfectly fair.
But I'll tell you this: if it was fair, then teams with an elite defense would kick. They would choose to kick. They would defer, and then and kick the ball, because if you can get a quick stop, 3 and out, then you actually get significantly better field position than if you receive. And if you have an elite defense, you'd kick off. And no team will kick off in overtime. None. So every single team is admitting that the coin toss matters. And that's the problem, is that the coin toss matters.
So you should give both teams at least one possession, and then from there you go into sudden death, basically.
Sure. And in this game, I don't think it would have mattered. That's why I'm not that worried about it, because I honestly, the Chiefs got the ball. You knew they were going to score. The Bills' defense had nothing left. There was going to be no resistance to the Chiefs. They were going to go down and score, and they did. And if you give the ball back to the Bills, you know what? The Chiefs defense has nothing left, and Josh Allen was going to drive him down and score.
It looked like it, right?
And it would have gone back to the Chiefs. And then guess what happens? They get to drive down and score again. And the Chiefs would have won because they won the coin toss, and they get the second chance first. So I don't really care that much. I really don't.
Well, you do if it's your team. You do if it's your team.
You do if it's your team, and I get that. But the only thing that would have mattered in this is if the Bills had gone down and scored and made it, had gotten to 42-42, or actually at that point it would have been 42-43 because the Chiefs would have had to kick the extra point. So it's 42-43, and then they decide, you know what, our defense is done. We can't do it. We're going for 2. We're going to win it or lose it right here on one play. That would have been where it would have been fun to decide the game.
Right. All right.
And unless you get in that situation, like, no matter what you do, it'll always be imperfect. So it doesn't matter to me. Just
right.
These were 2 fantastic teams. One of them has to move on. I'm sorry, the Bills. It's not you. I kind of wish it was just for a new team. It adds to
the pain of their franchise woes. Is the deal, right? It's like 13 seconds, right? And then it's tied up. I mean, that's how close that you were. It's tough. So let's move on. Let's stay in the AFC.
Yeah.
One of my favorite underdog stories of the year is the Bengals. I just can't seem to shake this team out of my head, and Joe Burrow and the way that he came back from that devastating injury when he was a rookie all the way to this moment. And he's changed the trajectory of the franchise. I love these moments where players come along and they change the whole franchise. It's, another one I was going to mention, and I forgot right before we pushed record, I was going to talk about Sean Payton leaving the Saints. And you can point to a single decision by a franchise that changed the trajectory, and that was it. Like he there was one, like 3 or 4 playoff wins in the history of the franchise before Sean Payton, and he's had 9 wins.
Sean Payton and his decision to bring in an injured Drew Brees and hope that he returned to form after what was a pretty bad shoulder injury. And then you have one of the most successful runs of any franchise.
And they they got 1 Super Bowl, but they were very competitive for the entire run, except for a couple of years where they were like 7 wins or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, there was a couple of years.
But I just wanted to say that, that was another thing, another franchise made, a bold move and boom. So the Joe Burrow thing, it's hard because the Bengals were just so bad for so long. And now it looks like they're going to be kind of perennial contenders. I mean, that's the jump that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And so I love the
title game.
They're in the AFC title game, and nobody expected that to happen this year.
Look at that roster and look at how young that roster is. There are some fantastic weapons that Joe Burrow has. And just he needs an offensive line that would make that offense unstoppable. But you look at the overall, that entire team is young. It's inexperienced, and it's got a couple of holes. They're not done building that roster. They have salary cap room and draft picks to finish building that roster this year. I've been saying all year, I thought they were a year away. Do they sneak into the playoffs? Sure. I think they're good enough to do that. That's what I thought. Instead, they won their division and then they won a playoff game, and now they're in the AFC. I still think they're a year away. I think they're better at this point next year than they are right now. Yes. Not just because guys like Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow continue to improve, but that they actually have a better roster top to bottom a year from now than they are right now. I think that the Bills and the Chiefs give you an AFC that's going to be scary good at the top next season. And the fact that the Bengals made it this far now before they're even done building their roster tells you a lot about the players they do have.
Yeah, well, and I was going to mention, just shout out to their kicker, Evan McPherson, 4 for 4, the 54-yarder as well. 13 points. I mean, 13 accounting for 13 points out of the 19 that they scored is just crazy to me. The Titans, on the other hand, just didn't play well enough to win. I mean, this was kind of their game. They were coming in as favorites at home. But Tannehill went 15 of 24, nothing spectacular, 220 yards, 1 touchdown. He had the 3 picks though, and 130 yards rushing overall. AJ Brown had 5 for 142 and a touchdown. Outside of that though, they just didn't do enough on offense.
The offense was AJ Brown and nothing else.
Yeah, right.
Really was.
Right.
I look at that, and when I saw Ryan Tannehill's stat line, I thought it was worse than that because it felt far. It was bad, and that's a really bad stat line, but it felt worse. But when I looked at that, and I go, God, it felt like if that's your stat line, your team should have got blown out, and they didn't. They lost on a last-second field goal. But Ryan Tannehill looked like trash. That might have been his worst game of the year. And this is a guy that I have supported since he got drafted. And people have talked, people have been up on him and down on him and up on him and down on him. And I've kind of supported him. But that game right there was awful.
Especially when you're in a position to get to the title game. So
that loss is on you, Ryan. Sorry. I've supported you forever, but you got to eat that one because you're the reason why your team didn't move on.
So Bengals at the Chiefs. Bengals got a shot in this thing, Keith?
I don't want to say no because I want it to be an entertaining game, but I honestly don't think they've got the bodies. Yeah. The only thing that might be is that Chiefs defense was so done at the end of that game. They were so gassed that they might just not be able to get
Bengals could play defense and cause Patrick Mahomes some issues and some trouble.
The Chiefs defense might not be able to get themselves up to play playoff caliber football at the beginning of this game. The Bengals have a good defense. You've also got Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And the Chiefs are going to have a really hard time with Jamar Chase. And I could see them doing that. But if I take that emotion part out of it and just go, okay, let's line these two teams up and play them 10 times, I think the Chiefs win 8 of them.
All right. So let's go to the NFC. Let's start with the 49ers at Packers.
That game was hard to watch at times.
It was 6 degrees at kickoff. It's just, it was. I mean, it was like there was really no offense in this game. 49ers end up winning on a walk-off 13-10. Rodgers finished 20 of 29, 225 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. They had 66 yards rushing for the Packers. And it was just like one of those things. Aaron Jones ended up having hardly any rushing yards, but ended up having some receiving yards out of the backfield. They just really couldn't get anything going. Didn't have a lot of down the field type stuff going on. On the other side, Garoppolo is anemic at best as a quarterback, right? And then they didn't have very many rushing yards either. They kind of won this game on defense and were able to kick the ball just enough to get this thing done.
The difference in this game was the 49ers special teams because both offenses were bad. The 49ers offense was worse, but both offenses were bad. Both defenses played pretty well. But what happened was the Packers can't block on special teams to save their life. They had a field goal blocked that would have been the difference in the game. And then they had a punt blocked that was picked up and scored. So a touchdown by the 49ers. The majority of the points the 49ers scored were on special teams. Yes. Because the 49ers, they didn't do anything offensively. It was so bad. And I know that they're in the NFC title game and they beat the Packers. They got there. They got themselves into the playoffs. They beat the Packers
at Lambeau.
They're at Lambeau and now they're in the title game. But they don't look like a good football team. They haven't looked like a good football team all year. So this will be a very interesting matchup. Okay, so let's talk about the other game, then we'll talk about the championship game. Rams
Bucks. Here's another walk-off situation. Rams beat the Bucks 30-27 on a walk-off field goal. The stat lines, when you take a look at the quarterbacks, are somewhat equal. The Bucks weren't able to run the ball really very much at all. The difference in the game, I thought, was just Max Gay, the kicker for the Rams, and the fact that the Rams committed to running the ball, which kind of opened up a little bit of opportunity for them in certain spots. But really, two teams kind of not playing a lot of defense and just kind of going at it.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. I think the difference in this game was everything, because the Rams absolutely dominated this game. They just decided that they didn't want to hold on to the football, and they lost 4 fumbles, including Akers going right before halftime, going into the end zone. There should have, right there, it would have been another easy 7 points. Decided to put the ball on the ground and not. They also had, at the end of the game when they were trying to run the clock out, he had an easy first down, and then someone just stuck a hand out there and caused him to fumble it. Cooper Kupp, of all people, had a fumble. It was one of those situations where the Rams just couldn't get out of their own way in the second half. It wasn't that Stafford made a lot of mistakes, because he didn't.
He did.
And it was just simply that the Rams let the Buccaneers back in it. And even though they let the Buccaneers back in it over and over and over again, they still won. They still made stops when they needed to. On the road. They still got that big play at the end in order to get them into field goal range to win the game. The Rams were the better team. They were the better team top to bottom. They played better at quarterback. They played better at running back. They played better on the offensive line. They played better.
Were the Rams always the best team in the NFC this year?
Yes.
Even they went through a rough patch.
They went through a rough patch when Robert Woods got hurt, and they had just signed Odell Beckham, and they needed Odell Beckham to be Robert Woods. He didn't know the offense. He didn't have any rapport with Stafford. They never played together. It was kind of a mess for 3 or 4 weeks, and the Rams offense looked not good. But once they got that figured out, once they had been together long enough to start to develop some rapport, the Rams had been the best team in the NFC.
I went into the season thinking that the Rams were pretenders. I saw the Matthew Stafford thing. I was like, Jared Goff is out of here. Matthew Stafford comes in. I knew that he would be a difference maker for that offense and Sean McVay, just because the whole playbook is available now to Sean McVay, and it was not for years with Jared Goff. It just was not. It never reached its potential. But I thought, it's the first year. They got to integrate all that stuff. Let's see what happens. Cam Akers gets hurt immediately.
Yeah, that was
right. And
that was one of those things for him to rupture his Achilles when he did, and still be back playing at the level that he's playing right now, this quick, is kind of miraculous.
Yes.
That said, he needs to learn how to hold on to the ball, because
True.
Those 2 fumbles,
they're going to need to depend on
deadly.
him. Yeah, they're going to need to depend on him down the stretch. So,
yep.
I agree with your assessment there about the Robert Woods thing and Beckham coming in. I mean, talk about a really decent pickup.
Oh man.
My goodness. Right. It's like, and Beckham finished 6 receptions for 69 yards in this game, but he's a nice compliment to Kupp, who just does everything. My goodness, Cooper Kupp.
Where would this offense be if they hadn't been able to get Beckham?
They would have been anemic. I think they would have been stuck in kind of churning. I think without really having a second weapon, it's really hard to move the ball, I think, consistently.
Cooper Kupp is such a good player, but he's such a good player in a particular role. And he's not a guy that's going to stretch the field. You need a guy that can stretch the field. And
especially with Stafford's arm.
Oh, especially with Stafford, yeah, because he's got a monster arm. But you need a guy that can stretch the field, because it creates more space for a guy like Cooper Kupp to work. and you give him space and he will go to work.
Well,
he's
talk about stretching the field, though. I mean, Cooper Kupp in that last play to get him in a position to kick the field goal, dude. I mean, that was over the top, and he beat Winfield, which is one of my favorite players in the NFL, my favorite player out of the draft a year ago. But the Rams are what they are. And so let's talk about the NFC Championship game where the 49ers go into the Rams, and the Rams made a public declaration for all their ticket holders to not sell their tickets so they wouldn't have Rams fans cheering in their own stadium. That's kind of sucky.
You don't want 49er fans in Rams Stadium. Like, you want SoFi to be packed with Rams fans. You want it to be loud and obnoxious, and
it has the potential to be, and we'll see if that happens. LA is such an aloof town. I don't know.
If you look at these rosters, both defenses have some talent and are pretty damn good, but the Rams have all the offensive talent with the exception of Samuel on the 49ers. The Rams offense is significantly better than the 49ers at almost every position.
Yes.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem with that. The Rams actually have a disadvantage in the coaching, which is very rare to say with Sean McVay, because I think he's a fantastic coach. I think he's one of the best coaches in the NFL. But for some reason, Shanahan in San Francisco has his number. Shanahan knows what McVay is going to do before McVay knows what he's going to do. And that's the reason why the 49ers have won 6 straight against the Rams, despite having an inferior team over most of that time. It just is what it is. Shanahan's got McVay's number. So if you ignore that and you just look at the rosters and it's home field and all of that, you got to think, God, the Rams are going to win this by 14. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Honestly,
I think
know.
The line on this game right now is only 3.5 or something like that. I mean, I would have thought it would have been larger, but I think that history has something to do with keeping that score.
So close. In this game, the line is closer than I think most people think. It's interesting because the tickets are fairly even on both sides, and the money is favored on fairly even on both sides, which means that the public and the sharps both don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that is weird.
So I think, this game's really going to depend on scheme for the Rams. And I agree with you on the Sean McVay coaching situation with Shanahan. That's a very interesting matchup. I have a hard time seeing the Rams over the entire game slowing down, or the 49ers slowing down the Rams offense with Matthew Stafford. I think Stafford, the reason they acquired Stafford is to win games like this, because the 49ers are kind of built to kind of slow stuff down like that. But that's a lot to ask when you have a talent like Cooper Kupp and Stafford, and now Akers coming at you along with Beckham Jr. It's just a lot to have to endure for 4 quarters.
Yep.
And then have a guy like Garoppolo on the other side trying to keep up. And they're not built to do that. So if the 49ers can't stop the Rams offense, there's no way they win this game.
So week 18, the Rams jump out 17-0 on the 49ers. Yeah. 49ers come back and win in overtime. And that overtime win is the only reason they made the playoffs. But
the Rams stopped scoring. That wasn't because.
Why?
Yeah, I don't know.
Why? Because Bosa and Armstead went to town. Like, they went to work in that game. And they made life very difficult for Stafford. And that is concerning. This is it. Just is true. What it is. The Rams are on,
and Armstead and Bosa had 2 sacks against each against Rodgers.
The Rams on paper are the better team. You can't. I don't think you can argue against it, especially given the quarterback difference between Stafford and Garoppolo. But the 49ers have won 6 straight against the Rams.
All right.
These are divisional foes. That's 3 straight years of the 49ers sweeping the Rams.
You've been making the argument now for about 7 minutes about how the 49ers can find a way. So I'm going to ask you to put it on tape. Give me a prediction in this game.
You want my prediction? I think the Rams win anyway. But I think it's,
you're going against a trend of 6 games straight.
I am.
The 49ers have won.
I am, because playoff football is different than regular season football, even in week 18, because the Rams had, when they, like in week 18, they got out to that big lead. There's no reason for them to put, to do everything that they can. Like, there's no reason to put a lot of great film on tape. So you back off and you wait, because they're also looking and watching Seattle dominate Arizona, so they knew their division win was secured, and I think that's part of it.
So which is the better offense? Which is the better offense, the Packers or the Rams?
I think the Rams is the better offense because it's more balanced. It's got more. Stafford's got more weapons.
Wow.
The Packers have the better quarterback. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be back-to-back MVP. They've got the better quarterback, but they've got one wide receiver that anyone cares about. Well,
and this is going to be inside in a dome, essentially, as well. So there's no weather impact in this game. Mm-hmm. Do you think that the Rams can get to 30 points again against the 49ers?
Yes. I think they can get in.
Can the Rams get more than 20 points?
27 to, I think the Rams can get to 27 to 30 points. I don't think the 49ers can keep up with that. For the 49ers to win.
Unless they get a turnover. Unless the guys that you mentioned, like Armstead and Bosa, get to the quarterback and cause some strip sacks and have Cam Akers not be able to hold on to the ball.
Yeah, I don't think that happens 2 weeks.
I know.
That happens 2 weeks in a row. That doesn't happen.
But you've got some guys that specialize in stripping the ball, so it'll be interesting.
It will be interesting. This is a game that shouldn't be interesting.
And these teams know each other really well.
You've got a Rams team which should talent-wise have been the number one overall seed. They just had that weird hiccup in the middle of the year, which caused them to drop, and so they didn't get there. But they're the best team in the NFC. They really are. And the 49ers barely made the playoffs. They haven't looked good all year. But I'm telling you, the way this matchup works, don't sleep on the 49ers. I'm picking the Rams. I think the Rams win by like 8 points and make it to the Super Bowl. But don't sleep on the 49ers. This game they're not going to go away. Even if the Rams jump out early, the 49ers will hang around and they will do what they always do. And that is give the Rams as many headaches as they possibly can, because it's just the history of the teams. So
do you have an idea of Chiefs and Bengals? Bengals just wilt in prime time. Is that your thought here? And the Chiefs run away with this thing, like scoring 35 points? And the Bengals can only score 21, or what?
I don't think it's the Bengals wilting. I just don't think that they're good enough. I think the Chiefs do run away with it, and it ends up being like, let's go 33 to 24 for the Chiefs. And that isn't to say that I don't want to say that the Bengals wilt and they're not ready for prime time and that they play poorly or they're not clutch or whatever. I think they're still a year away. I think the fact that they made it this far this year, when next year they're going to be better. The players that are on the roster will have all improved, and they have the cap space and draft cap, the cap space and draft capital to improve their roster. I think next year the Bengals are going to be a force, and watch out. Like, they're
would use a loss like this,
really tough team
to further motivate them. However, the Chiefs struggled mid-season, but they ended up closing out and won 8 of their last 9 games, plus now playoff games. The Bengals also finished very strong, and Burrow just seems to be on a special course of being not only a great quarterback talent on the field, but a mind to be able to will his team to be great. And
I agree with you that Burrow is quickly becoming one of my favorite players to watch.
Yeah.
He really is.
And just his badassery in
I love that term, by the
way. in press conferences is outstanding as well. You know, he's just one of those guys where you like, yeah, I can cheer for you, dude, because you're amazing.
The Bengals aren't my team that I root for.
Right.
But I want to see them win. I was so happy when they beat Titans. And then I was like, why am I so happy? Why am I cheering? Why am I celebrating? They're not my team. And then I'm like, oh, it's because I really want Joe Burrow to be successful. I was happy that they beat the Titans. And I am one of those teams that typically I will root for the Titans a lot of the time because I want to see Ryan Tannehill get the respect that he has never gotten.
Yeah.
But Ryan Tannehill looked like ass in this game, and Joe Burrow looked good.
Yes.
And the Bengals deserved to win that game. And I was super happy.
I'm actually excited about this game. I know that everyone's saying, well, the Bills Chiefs was the de facto Super Bowl and all that kind of stuff, blah, 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 blah.
Well, it was the de facto AFC title game.
Yeah, or AFC title game. But it's just a stepping stone to get to this game. I mean, the next game is always the most important game. And I just think that the Bengals Chiefs is going to be a better game than everyone thinks it's going to be. And I really do believe that this really comes down to the end. And the Chiefs have a
letdown after
it's
that?
Entirely possible, isn't it? Right? We've seen this before.
Even though it's the AFC title game. Do they have a letdown because they think the Bills are the better team?
Yeah, they've been there before. They know the routine. They know, what they need to do. And maybe the Bengals and Joe Burrow are just a little bit hungrier right now. And maybe that could be enough. And I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it might be on one of those convergence things where certain thing needs to happen. And the Chiefs have that letdown that you talked about a little bit, at least in the first half. And maybe that's enough, though, where they can never recover. I don't know.
So what are the odds you think that we have a Bengals 49ers Super Bowl?
God, I don't know, man. The 49ers just don't do it for me.
They really don't.
I have a hard time seeing that happen, but let's just say it happened. I would pick the Bengals at that point to win the Super Bowl.
But what are the chances that
happens? Well, I would say that's probably at 20% or less that would happen. That would be the matchup. I was thinking
10 to 8%.
I think it's close. I think it's closer than that because I believe in the NFL, especially this time of the year, certain teams rise up and certain teams just have the thing that you just can't predict. The intangible stuff. Burrow has it. Like I can already tell that he's got it. Now, can he pull his entire team with him? Yeah. At some point, he's going to have that moment. Is this the moment? You just can tell. You can tell. We've been around football enough. You can tell this guy's got it.
He does. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm like, but you know who else has that same thing you're talking about?
I know.
Patrick Mahomes on the other sideline. And,
and he's got more experience to drag with him.
He's got more experience, and he's got a better roster overall, top to bottom. He's got a better offensive line.
Yes. Right. But that doesn't always win football games.
It doesn't always win football games.
And that's why they still play.
Honestly, last weekend was the most fun playoff weekend we've had in forever. I don't know how long, with all four of those games being so fantastic.
Yeah.
I am so looking forward to this week's games because of the storylines and because on paper, Rams Chiefs win big, but I don't think that happens. I don't think they win big. I think the 49ers give the Rams everything they can handle.
I agree.
And I think
it's just the history shows that.
And I think that the Bengals are hungrier. They're fresher because I think the Chiefs got ran over at the end of that game and their defense a week. Do you
remember the Russell Wilson in Atlanta game when Russell Wilson was a rookie?
Oh yeah, where they came way.
If they had won that game.
Didn't they score?
It reminds me of the Joe Burrow Bengals team. where they didn't have the complete roster, but damn, their quarterback was so good they almost got it.
Didn't they take the lead with like 34 seconds left?
Yeah,
in that year?
And then Matt Ryan came back.
Came back and just
and the defense wilted.
And the funny thing is that team was known for its defense, the Seahawks. But that year, Matt Ryan was great that season.
Wow. Anyway, cool. Well, let's get on here next week and we'll talk about what happened.
Yeah,
let's
do that.
We also have another show.
We have a draft show. Don't forget our draft
show, and we're doing safeties and corners, 2022 NFL draft, and we've got Senior Bowl stuff coming up, so we're going to start talking about that soon. And then we've got all sorts of free agency to talk about. We've also got major draft stuff to talk about,
and we got to start talking about team needs and what the teams need to do in the draft and free agency.
I know we need a third show.
We need one, but
we'll talk about it.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Follow Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. I'm at Alvstad NFL. The show is at PF_playbook. Find us on our own draft, not our draft website, our own website. Simple as that. And then you can find us on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube, and tell your friends and family and subscribe. So until next time, we'll see you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Pro Football Playbook Podcast. Follow Keith at Myers NFL. Bill is at Alvstad NFL. The show is at PF_playbook. Listen and subscribe on your favorite podcast app or YouTube, and at our website, profootballplaybook.co.